quiz time. Here's a question for you guys. Are you a Sony Pony, Xbot, or Nintendo? If you think I came up with these on the spot, you are so wrong. These are legitimate insults I find people dishing out in console war comment sections. It's really sad. Also, I own all three, so I am all three. But how do console wars even happen? And why are console exclusives a thing? Well, let me take you back to the early 2000s. My parents and I were shopping for my first console and they gave me two options. The PlayStation 2 or the Game Boy Advance. Why were those my only two options? I have no fucking clue. But I had to go with the PS2, and that is solely because of all the games it had aisles full of shit like Sonic Riders, Crash to Insanity, Devil May Cry 3, Okami, KO the Kangaroo, Tai the Tasmanian Tiger, Jet Li Rise to Honor, Shrek 2, motherfucking Dragon Ball Z Budokai Tenkaichi 3. And if I had missed out on buying the PS2, then I'd be playing shit like what? Pokemon Mystery Dungeon, Sonic Advance 2, Kirby Nightmare and Dreamland, Legend of Zelda Minish Cap, Donkey Kong Country. Come on! You can see why I bought the Game Boy a year later. And that is exactly why console exclusives are a thing. Console developers need a reason for you to even buy their systems. Who in their right mind would willingly purchase the Nintendo Switch? Shut up and take my fucking money, you piece of shit. Back in the day, these practices made a lot more sense because consoles were competing with each other over which one could run games better, and it didn't matter what the game was at the time, it just mattered how it looked. You wanna play Enduro on the Atari 2600? What the fuck is this shit? Is that even a car? Atari 5200, now we're talking. Pole position. Look at the fucking graphics on this thing. Do you see why it's called pole position? Because the Atari 5200 is in pole position to take over the gaming industry. And then it got discontinued a couple years later. Do you know why? Do you know why it got discontinued? Because console wars, baby! Nintendo Entertainment System. I'm talking. Now look at the competition. Atari 7800. What the fuck is this pile of fucking shit? I just showed you Super Mario Bros. 3 and you're still making sequels for fucking pole position and whatever the fuck version of Mario Bros. This is. Were you guys not paying attention? I just explained this to you. Do you know who was paying attention? Sega, because now we got the Master System and that means Sonic the motherfucking Hedgehog, and that is what I am talking about. I'm about a boss. And now we've got a good thing going. Nintendo was not always competing with Sony and Microsoft, but with Atari and Sega, and the difference is what games you could start to play on these consoles. Sonic and Mario arguably are the reason Sega and Nintendo are standing. One no longer makes consoles, but still exists because of Sonic the Hedgehog. The other just went on to keep making the most underpowered consoles in existence, but the games, the fucking games, it was just year after year of quality and new IPs. They laid the groundwork for all the Nintendo exclusives you see to this day. Sega Genesis versus the Super Nintendo. This was the final battle in the 90s, and the thing is, it was an actual battle. Mario did not have sole control over the market, changing the split from 94% versus 6% in favor of Nintendo to a whopping 65% in favor of Sega. Cause Sonic was the shit, he was my fucking bitch, and then boom, penis slap, everything changed. Nintendo jumps into 3D, consoles are getting more powerful now. Sega Saturn, Atari Jaguar, that shit won't cut it here, brother. It's PlayStation 1 time, and the exclusives that started releasing for either system got fucking nuts. Ocarina of Time, Mario Kart 64, Majora's Mask, Donkey Kong 64, Banjo-Kazooie, Conker's Bad Fur Day. It looks pretty one-sided. But then, remember when you pussies were thugging out with Enduro in pole position? Check this shit out, bitches. Ridge Racer, Driver. Consoles had just begun to push technological capabilities, and Xbox wanted in on the action. It is now a three-way battle between Sony, Microsoft, and Nintendo, which brings us to today. Sony and Microsoft have been sucking each other's dicks. Each console duking it out, trying to get one up over the other, showcasing what their system can do better, what games play on it better. Halo, Gears of War, Fable on one end, Uncharted, Metal Gear, and God of War on the other. But where one company kept focusing on publishing more and more hit titles, the other focusing on processing power, thinking console exclusives wouldn't matter as much as fucking teraflops. And really, people knew there was no real reason to buy the Xbox One, or the One S, or the One X, because why? Apart from maybe Sunset Overdrive, I'm not sure how many people still consider Halo or Gears of War the groundbreaking series they used to be. Cuphead and Ori were Xbox exclusive until they weren't, and now you can play everything in Xbox's library on PC. From Microsoft's point of view, they shot themselves in the foot in the console department, and that was only made more apparent by the late realization that nobody was gonna buy these piece of shit machines. The PS5 is still outselling the Xbox Series S and X because the exclusives weren't buying a PS5. So Microsoft thought, hey, let's just fucking buy everything. That'll solve the problem. It didn't solve the problem. It didn't solve it when they bought Rare. It didn't solve it when they bought Bethesda, and I have no idea whether purchasing Activision Blizzard will solve the problem further. Recently, Redfall was a disaster, and Starfield wasn't the hit Microsoft were hoping for, and the games that were actually crazy good were not pushed to the forefront. 2023 was supposed to be a huge year for Xbox, and now they're looking to 2024 being that big year with games like Hellblade 2, Indiana Jones, and Avowed. Avowed not to suck dick anymore. Come on, Microsoft. Nobody cares that much about the high specs and the graphics anymore. Games look pretty as hell but are shallow as fuck, and it's the games that don't really look all that end up being where gamers are having the most fun. Nintendo is fully aware of this and has been for several years. Who the fuck wants to buy any of these systems? But then you look at that motherfucking library and it's just like, damn. Like fucking damn! There's a reason they've been the company to beat for 4 decades, and if their games were no longer exclusive, they'd be in a shit ton of trouble. Which brings me to the final question. Should console exclusives even exist anymore? As the consumer, not at all. Realistically speaking, one system is capable of running all these games coming out. Games don't look that much better than they did when the PS4 was churning out God of War, Red Dead 2, and Uncharted 4. It's mostly frame rate upgrades and 4K ray tracing and teraflops and floppy disks and floppy dicks, I don't know what I'm saying. As the developer, no. Again, you stand to make more money. When you make games for all systems, you rake in a lot of cash. Unless you make crap like this, then nobody really wants it no matter how many systems you release it on. You could release this shit on the fucking BlackBerry and I would still choose to play Brick Breaker. Fucking piece of gamers gotta get comfortable not owning games, bitch. As the console manufacturer, exclusives matter a lot, and that's where it gets tricky because I'm the consumer, I care more about spending less money on consoles and more money on games. And what's crazy now is that these guys don't just make exclusive games. Timed exclusives are the latest in mindfuckery. One company owns a game exclusively for a limited period of time before it releases it anywhere else. I mean, what the fuck level of petty is this fucking shit? And I don't mean a game like Cuphead eventually coming out to other platforms. I mean when a game has timed exclusivity for a month or 3 months or 6 months and it's like, hey guys, you can play it on these other systems now. It's like dating your partner in a monogamous relationship and then suddenly she up and says, actually, I'm into polygamy. That was a really bad analogy. But there is a tiny situation where console exclusives might matter a bit, and that's when it comes to competition. This is really important, man. It's like one of those situations where Disney owns multiple companies and then decides to put out steaming hot piles of dog shit, and why not? When you own the competition, you can do whatever you want. Look at Microsoft. These guys are way too comfortable purchasing studios instead of working on in-house exclusives. Look at what happened to the games Rare used to make, and look at what they make now. Fucking hell. They even wanted to own Nintendo at one point, and God forbid that shit ever happens, I'll stick my Switch up my ass. Look how comfortable Pokemon got, and look how comfortable their fans got. This shit is selling for $60 fucking dollars. I salute you, pal world. Fuck you, Game Freak. So, do console exclusives still matter? Well, my fellow Sony Ponies, Xbots, and Nintendogs, I'll let you figure this one out while I game on my Soulja Boy console. Hadouken!